So for row 1, we're going to start by making a slip knot. And if you need help with a slip knot, I've got a few other videos that could be helpful for that. And I always start with 6 for this body shape. So we're going to chain 2, which is 1 plus 1. We work in the first one. We're going to single crochet 6 in this space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll double check here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I love this yarn. We're going to slip stitch the 2 ends of that row around together. And that's the base. It's going to be his little bottom. From here, we're going to work the tail off. Now we go off 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I add 1 so we can turn and work back into the back bumps. In the first back bump, we're going to go slip stitch for a little tippy on his tail, and then we're going to do a single crochet in the next one. And then in these last 2 bumps, which this one is hiding, so don't forget about him, we're going to single crochet 2 together. So that means you're going to pick up 1 stitch in there, and then you're going to turn it slightly and pick up that one in there. We've got 3 on here, 3 loops. We're going to close all the loops as 1, and that's a single crochet 2 together. Okay, so now that we've got the tail out of the way, we're going to start our increases for this round. We're going to do 2 increases, and then we're going to work on a leg. 1, 2, and 1. The first stitch of the leg you're going to work into, it's going to be a slip stitch, and then a single crochet stitch, and that little offshoot is his little bubby legs. So we're going to link this first, or this last increase stitch into the next. So we're going to do 2 together again. That's another increase. We're going to do another increase over here. 1, 2. And then over here, we're going to do another leg. 1, 2, plus the 1, slip stitch, single crochet stitch. And after I do an offshoot, I always like to link the stitch so there's no gapping. See over here, it's such a small scale, you really have to consider the holes you're creating as you're making things. So I'm going to link and then work the single crochet increase over here. So that was the first stitch, that's the second stitch in the same spot. We've got 1, 2 right in there. And then the last stitch space of the round, this is the 6th hole, we're going to do another increase. And then when we get to the end of the round right here, we're just going to pretend the tail doesn't exist. Pretend that doesn't exist. And we're going to work into the first, like right before that first increase of the row right there, we're going to slip stitch in there as if the tail doesn't exist. So we'll do a slip stitch, let the tail be wild and free. And that makes it just kind of stick out like that. And then we've considered most of these gaps. They're small enough now, regular stitch size, that they won't pucker open when you stuff things. So for the third round, or row, we're going to just work all the stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the same way we did the tail, we're going to just ignore the leg. So in the same space you do the linked stitch, ignoring these 2 stitches right here, we're gonna single crochet 1, 2, 3, 4 between the legs, and the same way we're gonna skip these 2, 1, 2, and we're gonna work into there again for the last 4, for a total of 12 stitches in that row. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you're seeing me pause or go off camera for a second, I'm trying to fight with my my center pull. Don't mind me. I don't feel like doing much cuts or editing. Editing is the bane of my existence. So we're gonna try to do this all in one go. Plus it's quick. Next row, I like to finagle, like this is a very nice smooth transition into the row. I like how it's vertical and perfect. These are a bit floppy and off-putting. They kind of look like he'd be waddling. So what I like to do to make them stick into the body is tack them in this row. So in that first stitch right there, I'll be working them in at the same time. So we put our hook in here and then in here. So first we'll do 1, 2, 3, we'll do 4 stitches, 4 stitches, and then again, I actually like it to be on the top side. So I can either work in the absolute base of it in here or up in here, and I feel like that gives me a little bit more room to play with. So in the pattern it's marked, but this space right here, insert your hook in the leg and then insert your hook into the next stitch space, which is kind of like the groin, or obviously the next open stitch space in the belly. And there you go, that would be the side profile. So it really does like create the same feeling as the tail over here with the leg and the foot over there. It also gives a good base to kind of stand on if you don't overstuff the bum. I always overstuff the bum. But the plan was, when I first wrote this, to give us some structure and stability for him to sit on. So we'll do the 2 middle stitches of the belly. 1, 2. Mostly everything is a single crochet unless otherwise described. Same thing in the next leg. We're gonna look for that. In the pattern it's a marked stitch, but here I just work by eyeballing it. I know that I've got a stitch here, so I work in the next one that I can see, which is this V here, this little braid. This can be tricky, so open up your loop if you need to get around. Stick your hook underneath of that braid and then work into the next available stitch in the front side. Pull up a loop. When you do that, it'll be easier for you to tighten these down if you do it at the same time when they're together. As long as the yarn is the same width as your hook, the stitch will be fine. Close that single crochet, and then you've done the same thing on this side. On this side, we're going to go same thing 4. We're going to work 4 single crochet back towards the tail. 4, and just to show you, we're going to chain 1 just to show you the side profile. This is kind of what you're going for. It's a little dino legs, little dino legs. And his little tum-tum. He's got 2 little stitches in the tum-tum where it was 4 down here when these were created, and now they've been pulled in like that. So we're on row 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on row 5. Sorry, row 5 is single crochet 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to do the same thing as we did for the legs with the arms. Chain 2 plus 1, slip stitch, single crochet stitch, and then we're going to link these stitches in the belly. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. The first one with a linked stitch and 3 regular crochets, single crochets. We're going to repeat the arm. 1, 2, plus 1, slip stitch, single crochet stitch, link in the next space, and then we're going to fill these last 3 single crochets. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now that's his little body so far, and he's kind of reaching up. We're going to do the same thing with the arms, or a very similar thing with the arms. So for this row, because we're reaching also the end of the body, I've got a little shaping that we do in here. We're going to single crochet 2 stitches together first to jog by this point, the seam is kind of leaning towards the right, and I want it to be more in the middle. So we've got this single crochet 2 together, which pulls the seam back to the side, as well as draws the shape in a little bit, because that's like a little hump back, because we're going to be getting up to the head soon. Then we're going to work 2 stitches, 2 single crochets right there. And when we get to the arm, instead of just skipping over the arm like we did with the tail, we're going to be working into this first space right here. So we're going to be folding the arm in on itself and working the first stitch of the arm as well as the armpit. So these 2 stitch spaces, this one and this one, will be folded together and worked at the exact same time. So I put my hook in both like that, yarn over, and I single crochet them together. And in that way, he puts his arm to his body and down. And then in the next 2 stitches, we're going to single crochet 2 together to bring his belly in towards his head as well. And on this side, it's a little bit trickier, but it's the exact same thing. We're going to first put the hook into the first stitch of the arm, and then into the next stitch of the body. So we fold this guy over, and we work, open this if you need to, we work this way, donk, and then we make that little V out of 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through both spaces, and then I'd like to yarn over and close it, but I've got these big loops. So we're gonna make sure that these, pull back the working yarn, make sure that these are the same height. As long as they're loose on there, you're good. And close that stitch down. Now that's fastened the arm to the body. And then we're gonna skip over these 2 stitches in the arm, 1, 2, and just work in, this is almost the shoulder portion. So we're gonna do 4 stitches back this way. 1, oh, it's almost the shoulder portion, right? We're going to work back in here. This is almost the shoulder portion. We're going to do a single crochet 2 together, and then another single crochet. So single crochet 2 together, and then another single crochet. And that will be the end of the body. Any loose yarns you see, just pull them out or cut them off, and that gives us a little bit more of a closed body shape. He's got his little belly, his arms pointing down, his legs pointing in, right? And then the tail still sticking off the back. While we've got the good shaping that tapers him in, so you can tell like the delineation of his body is done now, and his head's going to begin. So at this point, we can start to stuff the body a bit. Just make sure to shape it as you stuff it and don't overstuff it, because it's not really needed. If you overstuff it, you'll round out the bum and he won't be able to stand up properly unless you give him a stand. I learned the hard way. Okay, so right here we're going to do front post, single crochet, increase, front post, single crochet, 1, front post, single crochet, increase, and we'll do that twice. So there's 2 increases to account for his chubby cheeks, and then we'll do a regular single crochet in the middle for his little chin, 2 single crochet increases, 1, 2, 1 single crochet, and an increase on that side. So it really opens up the pattern for the head. And then we're going to do 2 rows of single crochet. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There we go. We're going to repeat that again. So we've got 2 solid rows, giving us a little bit of height. Okay, once we've got to this point, we'll start decreasing the head a bit. So we want to single crochet 2 together, and then we'll do single crochet 3, and we'll repeat that around. 1, 2, 3, and then we'll repeat that 2 more times. Single crochet 2 together, 1, 2, 3, single crochet 2 together, 1, 2, 3. Join the row in the back, and for this row we're going to single crochet, single crochet 2 together, all the way around, alternating. Now it'll be at this point, once you close that row, that you'll want to stuff this head, just so that in the end you're not trying to shove it in too small a hole. Now when you stuff the head, you want to make sure that you stuff the chubby cheeks You're gonna direct the stuffing towards the cheeks and the back of the head. Because he is front heavy with his little rawr, you're gonna wanna stuff him better than this, but this is the amount of stuffing I brought out to the studio. The last row is all single crochet 2 together, and then we fasten off. If you do decide to put safety eyes in, you'd put them in about 3 stitches apart, right above the arms here, in the second row of the head. So they'd go about there, and that's around where I put my felt eyes as well, but we'll go over that in a minute. So we'll do our single crochet 2 together. Slip stitch to all of that, and then we'll fasten it on. Now for this part, I like to stuff more stuffing in the hole to make sure I've got a good fill. Make sure your scissors are closed, and you can tuck anything into the tip of your amigurumi. But there he is, my little fire dragon. All no-sew, all parts of his body attached. And the way that I do the eyes is I take my piece of felt, I cut off a couple pieces in the size that I like. Usually I do a lot at once, so I'm not figuring it out as I go, if you will. I just cut the size shape that I like. The pattern does have templates in it though, for anyone who decides to support me in that way. But I typically freehand and then offer templates for anybody who's never done that before. So I cut one to the shape that I like, and all of my amigurumi have kind of rounded doe eyes. They're pretty big. They've got a little bit of a flat side on one side. It's kind of my signature look, if you will. And then always you cut one out, even if you have the felt template. You cut one out in the felt, and then you overlay it onto the next one, and then you cut this one out. That helps the shapes to be the same because the felt sticks to the felt. Alternatively, you could print the felt templates onto wax paper and then iron the wax paper onto the felt, but it does leave a little bit of a film, which I don't love. So this is my preferred method. Just give it a little bit of a haircut. And then I usually make it so that the eyes are opposites, like that. And then I pick their placement. As I mentioned earlier, these ones are a bit big, but that's okay. The bigger the better. Anyways, so what I would do is I would put both eyes on where they belong just to see how they look, and then I would take one off while sewing, just so I only have to hold one in place, just kind of getting a general idea of what suits them best. And it should speak to you. If it doesn't, then go by the photos in the patterns, or just like the reference, like you can screenshot it and reference image. Use the references as your guide. So when we're actually sewing this down, you want to thread your needle. Now if you're using safety eyes, skip this part.
It's probably going to be heartbreaking. I'm going to try to thread this on camera. Hee hee hee. Okay.
So you thread your needle. Give yourself a good amount, but not so much that you have to stretch your arm out every 2 seconds, because that will mess with your shoulder after a while. Wet your fingers. Wrap the thread around your finger once. Twist it, like roll it off the end of your finger, and then pull that down. So that's your knot. And I apologize for how often the lights changed in this video. Just clouds passing overhead are making it seem so dark in here, even though I have studio lights on right now. In order to sew the eyes on in this way, I press them in place. I put the needle into the back of the eye and I pull up. That way, whatever knot is there is now anchored in the back of the eye, and any knot can just be tucked in behind. So what I'm going to do is, after tucking it in, grab a single piece of yarn and then work back up into the eyeball. Make sure you're stabilizing both, and just with a consistent stitch. Anything just adjacent to that felt piece can be used as an anchor. And then you want to make sure that you're rotating as you're working the piece, or it makes it extremely hard to keep centralized or in the same placement you started with. Just rotating all the way around. Now I try to do about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch stitch type, stitch width here, and stitch depth, just to give it sort of a consistent and clean look. Obviously you can see the stitches if you get really close, but sometimes people prefer that so that they know that it's handmade. Now when I get across the bottom here, I like to go in from the same point right across, so I give it a little bit of a flattened out. Like, you can pull the felt into the shape that you prefer a little without overstretching it. And when I get to the last stitch, I grab the thread, I leave the needle in, and I wrap 2 or 3 times around the needle, and then push that thread down to the base of the felt where it's going to live, holding it in place with my thumbnail. I pull out the needle and I give it an extra tug and push. So that's now tied off and secured. And in order to make sure it's not going to come out, I sew across the underside of the eye and pull out on this end. That way I know that I'm giving myself a little bit of a tail and I'm not cutting it off right at the knot. So when I do cut this, I know that there's a little bit of extra material behind the eye to really anchor it in. Now, if this ever gets in your way where the fluff is kind of impeding on the shape or something, not only can you press it out in the direction and the way that you like it, you can also trim the hairs. I'd be careful with this, but sometimes the fibers can kind of be, you can push the fibers as you're sewing, so it is beneficial to just give it a little haircut without going crazy and like cutting the internal threads that make the yarn up. But now I'm just going to repeat that on the other side here, and I'll get back to you to show you how to make the little fire for his tail. So in order to make his tail, what I do is I pull out some worsted weight yarn and a fine tooth comb, And the needle and thread again, and a pair of scissors. I'm just gonna cut off a couple of inches of each color that I'd like to see in the flame. And now this can change obviously based on whatever color flame you're trying to make, but it really is kind of a yarn eater, so I try not to put too much into it. Now I've got the neon just to match his skin tone here, and often I'll do like a deeper orange. I think this works. So for this, what you want to do is just hold it in place. Try to have them all at about the same length and start brushing. First, we're brushing to unravel, so very gently. Very gently here. You'll start to see the fibers unravel from one another. And then we want to keep doing that lower and lower. So we're not necessarily trying to break the yarn off straight away, but separate it. And the more you brush it out like this, the more separated it will become without snapping or tangling. If you go too low too fast, you'll end up with knots like that. Now that orange is leaning very yellow, so maybe a little bit warmer orange that would be a little bit more between the red and the yellow would make more of an impact, but this is what I've got for now. So often what I'll do is I'll brush out a good portion. Got a tangle there. I'll brush out a good portion, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches long, just enough that it can be the full length of the tail without going crazy. I don't want to do too much. And then I'm going to thread my needle again, just off camera. Don't, because I'm a little blind. I don't see good, and tie that knot that we discussed before. Now you can see that I've kept the yarn fluff in the comb. Now that's important, because right here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut it off. I'm just gonna cut it off right there. But this is going to be the whole tail. So we can also unfurl that side. We can reorganize, twist, or shift it in there. But what I like to do is sew that. Go through those 3 strands of yarn in between my 2 pieces of thread and make an anchor knot at the base of the tail. Now it doesn't really look much like fire as it is, so in order to make it look more like fire, I'll open it up like a flower. And then I'll take all of this fluff out from here, kind of turn it into a little bit of a lock, donk it in the middle, and then what I like to do is sew up into that a couple of times, just for a couple of stitches, so kind of tie everything together. And if I feel like I haven't done enough, I'll flip it over and I'll go again. Now it is a little labor intensive to do this, which is why I do not make that many of these, but it is really nice in the end result. So now that I've got a little bit of a ball up in here, all sewn together, I will flip my fire flower over and kind of use the oils from my hands and twist it almost again into the shape of a lock while pulling this thread taut. I will twist and drag the fire flame out, and as you can see, it really gives us that like bulbous ball in the middle center here, and then the fire flame tip, because all of these are at different lengths. Obviously, if you have an issue with something looking a little bit ratty, you can go back over this once you've sewn it. Know that some strands are not attached in the middle, so they will come out, or they're loosely attached in the middle. So you can brush this, but know that you're gonna lose strands. You can either sew these back in. There's no perfect solution, but just know that this is not 100% sturdy. It's just for like the illusion of fire. Now what I like to do is leave it kind of messed up looking, because it's better like that. I like to twist it as much as I can, especially at the tip there where the fire extends, and then kind of mash it into itself and play with that ball that I created to make more of a flame look. If this starts to get a little crazy, we can just nip it off like that. Not important. If we like the way that it's looking, what I do is I'll hold it at the base, and then I'll go over this section a few more times with some knots in different directions, just so that I know that I've got like a good amount of the yarn secured, that when I sell this to somebody, it's not necessarily gonna fall out immediately. It's not gonna be washing machine safe, that's for sure. That's what my tags say anyway. But it's definitely going to look as realistic as I can do with a piece of yarn. Okay, so now that I've got about 3 or 4 pieces of little knots in there, make sure that I get rid of this. Don't like the way that looks. Bleeding into my fire. No thank you. And then once we've got it all kind of the way that we like it, see, it's kind of giving the illusion of fire from every angle, then we're going to take his little booty and add this just to the top of that stitch right in there. I like to put it in the, if you look at him from the back, I like to put it right in the top V, so that first slip stitch. And the way that I do that is I use the thread as the anchor. I go right into that space and out the bottom, and you pull it, and it just lives there now. So I can do the same thing I did before, but now through and around the yarn, also up, and then also through the fire, and then also back down. And I do that 2 or 3 times until I feel pretty confident that it's not going anywhere. Oh, my storage got full there. Just right after you finish the fire flame for his tail, the last step is the belly patch. Now this is optional. I can add notes in the pattern to explain how to even change these colors instead of doing this. I have 2 versions, but I do kind of like the way that the belly patch looks. So what I do for this is I use the off-white yarn, start a slip knot, and I do a chain 2, 1 plus 1, work into the first one again, and then we do 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we're gonna slip stitch into the first stitch and chain 1 for the next row. We're gonna increase 1 in the next 5 stitches.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches right there, and then we'll slip stitch into the 6th and fasten that off. I just like to do a little yarn over, pull through the loop, and cut a very short tail. Because once you tighten this yarn up, it really extends. So anything past 2.5, 3 inches, you're just wasting yarn at that point. Like, you don't need more than that length of a tail. This is the belly patch. Now, the reason I say this is optional is because this goes on to the stomach, and I sew this from the neck mark or the neckline down to between the legs down here. And it also goes from, I just tuck those strands in, it goes from armpit to groin, and it just covers the middle area right there very nicely. Now I'll sew that off camera and I'll bring it back to you and show you what it looks like. Once it's all sewn together, this is what it'll look like. He's got a little round belly, a cute little head, and a little flame on his tushy. Now I sell these for $20 each at conventions. What I'll often do is I'll set one out as a sample, and then I'll just make a bin of them, up to 6. Usually I don't exceed 10 of any one make, but even just doing them in batches of 5 and 6, they go a lot faster if you batch make the bellies, if you batch make the tail, if you batch make the eyes, if you batch make the fire even, and have them all sewn and ready to attach. Everything is much faster that way. And then I find that I can actually get a good $1 per hour rate on my amigurumi. And if you want to see more of these short mini free amigurumi tutorials, I will link them right here. Please follow, like, share, subscribe. Anything helps. We really appreciate it. Have a good one. Happy making.